Um, all right, well, welcome to the Gumtree Bookstore. Rick Cleveland, Neil White, welcome back to each of
Thanks.
you
Thank you, Jack. Glad to be here.
for different chapters in y'all's writing lives, and always glad to see fellow Mississippians who are erudite and clever and productive, and all sorts of other compliments I could give you for. That's the pay, by the way, for being here. So just trying to compliment you as much as I can. But we're really excited to visit just a little bit with the Mississippi football book, which y'all co-authored, and which we're going to be proudly promoting this fall all the way to Christmas with signed copies. And I, like a lot of us small town guys that grew up in Mississippi, sports was everything to me growing up. I mean, in the summer it was baseball or tennis or golf. In the fall it was football. In the winter it was basketball. If it rained, I got to go bowling. I mean, those are just my childhood days, and I remember so well, even as a 7 or 8 year old. I was born in 1951, but just the late 50s, and my dad taking me over to Oxford to see some of the games, and a little bit like y'all's fascination with all the data. And if people are interested in the data and the stats, this is the Bible from now on of all the Mississippi football stats. But I would love on the way home, I would get the program and I would read to Dad, except we were listening to the scores from all around the country, and they would already have in the Eastern scores. So Colgate 15, Penn 12. I thought, I'd hear all these schools just as a little boy growing up that had already been completed on the East Coast. But I would read out every name on the Ole Miss team, where they, because it always, I don't know, still does not, has their hometown, Verona, Hattiesburg, Corinth, their height and their weight, and whether they were sophomore, junior, or senior. Back then they weren't freshmen. But I remember those days clear as a bell. Just those guys were the heroes, of us small town boys growing up. And I guess y'all had some of those same
Absolutely.
same ideas.
Same way. Heights and weights have changed a little bit over the years.
Yeah. Well, I thought I just had made the book is, and I'm.
A little white.
Well, somebody get it, but the
240 pages.
240 pages, and it's divided into high school, junior college, and professional. And it's also personalities. It's also great games. I mean, there are lots of different ways it's organized. But I was going to start, Neil. You were just starting to say about it, but really one of the pioneer greats was from right here in Tupelo, and in fact, we still have a baseball field named the Reese Field in our city park. But tell me a little bit about the Tupelo Flash.
Yeah, the Tupelo Flash. He's pretty much been forgotten by most folks. But Gil Reese was from Tupelo. He played for 4 years here at Tupelo High School. His classmate was Hook Stone, who's a member of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame. There was actually a big story when Mississippi A&M was going to play Vanderbilt that those two were going to be playing against each other. The Tennessean did a big feature on him, but back then freshmen could play, and he started all 4 years. He ran a 10-1 100-yard dash, which was unheard of at that time.
Yeah.
He was apparently a golden boy who just was adored by all those who were Vanderbilt fans. And back then, Vanderbilt dominated. I think they won 26 games in a row against Ole Miss in that era until the 1940s.
So, for those days.
Yes. So there, I know. But he was captain of the team his senior year of football, basketball, and baseball.
Wow.
But I read a story this morning in anticipation of the speech at the library. I didn't even get to tell this. There was a story about him playing against Georgia, the Bulldogs, who were a great team back then. His sophomore year, he scored 4 touchdowns, one on a punt for 65 yards. He had 1 run of scrimmage for 81 yards, and he rushed for 185 yards as a sophomore against Georgia, and Vanderbilt won 35-7.
Wow.
But if you ever have a chance to go read those stories in the newspapers, the Tennessean from 23 to 25, Gil Reese was the Archie Manning of that era.
Wow. Well, I need to go read those myself again. But I appreciate your recalling that. And Rick had mentioned it too last time he was in Tupelo. Well, all right. I want, as a proud Tupeloan and actually as a member of this team, I want to ask why Fulton, under Mississippi's first integrated high school team, on page 22, you talk about Fulton. I love Fulton. I love Itawamba County. My grandfather came from Itawamba County. But in 1967, Tupelo High School was integrated by Frank Dowsing and another classmate of his, David Adams. And I happened to be junior on that team. And Frank Dowsing is in the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame. So, but he was not the professional player Ben Williams was, but he did for he was the Jackie Robinson of Mississippi. I'm sorry if y'all do a sequel, you need to put him in there. But he integrated the Big 8 schools in football, basketball, and track as a sophomore, as a junior. He came in. I'll tell you a quick story about him. There was Tupelo High School and there was Carver High School, and there were 2 years of freedom of choice. No whites chose to go to black high school, but 5 black students came to Tupelo High School in the fall of '67, and his parents were both teachers, and they just thought he could get a better education. They had better books, just how the unequal, separate but equal was back then. And that summer he'd been in an automobile accident, so when two-a-days started, his mouth was wired shut because it had broken his jaw. And so we were all in pads. It was hot. He was in a T-shirt and gym shorts, and how immature, high school age. Well, yeah, he looks like he's an athlete, but can he take a hit, this kind of stuff. And so he gets the second week of September, he gets his mouth unwired, and I was firmly ensconced as the B team quarterback. That was obviously a mistake by the head coach, but I couldn't convince him otherwise. The fact that I was, 5'5" and 120 pounds. But anyway, I loved playing quarterback, and I was a B team quarterback, and we were going down to Amory to play on Thursday night for the varsity play on Friday. And Dennis Waite, who was our offense coordinator, but the B team head coach, on the bus going down to Amory, he said, we ran the I formation, quarterback, fullback, tailback. And he said, we're going to put Frank at tailback, and you just call the play and then tell him what his role is on the play. Very good. So they kick off. We receive kickoff. Somebody runs it back to about the 20-yard line. and I say, all right, we're going to run sweep, 13 sweep left. And I said, Frank, I'm going to reverse out, pitch to you, the fullback's going to lead, try to get outside the reverse out, pitch to him. 80 yards later, untouched, as the referee's trying to catch up with him. He ends up in the Amory end zone, waits for the referee to get there, tosses the ball. We didn't have a kicker on the B team, so I just had to go for 2. So I don't get to go back to the bench. But, so we go for 2. I think we actually made the 2. So I'm coming back over to the sideline. I'm like, Coach White, yes. Gosh, you see how fast he is? We're going to have a great season. Coach White comes up and puts his arm around me and said, Jack, don't get used to Frank being on the B team. and he started the next night at wingback, and then he played defensive end. It shows how talented he was.
Yeah.
He was about 5'10", but just shows Bear Bryant had ended up recruiting him to Alabama. He ended up going to state. But in high school, that's why I'm saying this, he was, besides the Fulton thing as far as the schools, he was doing this exact same thing in Clarksdale, Corinth, Columbus, Jackson. I mean, everywhere the Big 8, North Big 8 played. He ended up a senior year leading Tupelo High School to the 6A basketball championship, playing center. They fouled him every time he got the ball. He made 16 out of 16 free throws in the championship game.
Wow.
He broke the state high school 100-yard dash record and the 120 hurdles record at Tupelo High School. Then he went to recruit at Mississippi State, went to state, started as a sophomore. I was still a freshman, couldn't play. Intercepted a pass at the end zone in Oxford with one hand to save a state victory over Ole Miss. He was Mr. Bulldog, just like Ben Williams was Mr. Ole Miss.
Wow.
So if you do a sequel, talk to me about
the
it.
great thing about doing a project like this with Rick Cleveland is he can remedy something like that with his column.
Well,
I know. I mean, I know
Oh,
very
I know.
well what a great athlete and everything he was, and yeah, I was on the selection committee when we.
oh, I know. And I didn't mean
Put him in the
I didn't
Hall
mean
of
to
Fame, yeah.
ambush you with that, but I was just
Yeah,
for our
yeah.
Tupelo audience. I was just saying.
Sure.
He did. And you know, our good friend Mike Rubenstein was a friend of Frank's.
yeah, yeah.
In fact, my favorite picture, and I'm jumping ahead, but my favorite picture in this book is that picture of Rube at the Mississippi Valley State, Alcorn State game, the game of the century,
No,
on
great.
page 140. Did you know Mike Rubenstein, Neil?
I did.
He was a classmate of mine at Vandy, and
I did not know that.
there he is.
I love that.
But he was, in fact, our 50th college reunion is next month.
Oh, really?
How many times did you see that expression?
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Oh, I thought so too. Lisa said the same thing. My wife said that
Yeah.
looks just like Mike. But yeah, he was I think he majored in something like Oriental Studies or something like that, and was a brilliant guy, but ended up just loving sports. But he had a quote. He said he played center for Boonville when Tupelo played us, Frank Dowsing, and he said, I played great. I held Frank Dowsing to 28 points that night. But
Rube was great.
anyway, he was great. All right, well, let's go on to some other things. That the wrong way play. You talk about smart coaching. That's a great story. Tell that story, Rick.
Well, it was here. It is right
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It was There's just so many different facets to the story, including the coach who called the wrong way play had ALS, and he couldn't even be on the sidelines. He was coaching from the back of a pickup truck behind the end zone, and they had the walkie-talkies.
Because that's why I say I can't believe we must have misheard him or something.
Yeah. So they scored. They had to win to get to the playoffs. They had to win by 5, I believe, and they were leading by 4. And it's 4th down at midfield, and they weren't a very good passing team, and they didn't have a kicker who could kick it that far. So the coach, who's got ALS, sitting in the back of a pickup truck, tells him to call timeout. They call his son, who was the quarterback, over the sidelines and tell him, I want you to run the wrong way, run out of the end zone for a 2-point safety, and then we'll try to win the game in overtime.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
They tied the game. Well, they tied the game by giving up the safety, and they brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
it was
As long as it
special.
worked, I guess. But otherwise, they like I said, they would have won the last game, but not
Yeah,
gone to the playoffs.
but the thing was, the quarterback goes back to the huddle and tells everybody in the huddle what the coach's instruction was, and they all said, "We're not doing that." He said, "They said we'll lose the game," and they said, "Well, the only chance we can play again next week is if we do this."
That's a
And
great
they
story.
did it. And it helped that the quarterback, who was the coach's son, was also the biggest guy in the huddle.
Yeah. I bet. Well, that's what I mean. That you don't make that stuff up. That's just
And that was picked up all over the country.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
It was a national story.
Yeah, it was. It became they had it featured on all the NFL halftime shows. 3 days later.
Yeah.
So 2 days later.
All right, this may be a little surprising for y'all that I'm bringing up Jackson Prep's 26 state championships, but it's because Ricky Black, who was the coach at Tupelo before that, was just such a beloved coach here for I think maybe 10 years or something. He was here. I don't know if y'all have a comment on Coach Black, but just great fellow as well as a Good
wonderful
coach.
Unbelievable.
coach.
Unbelievable. Well, I'll tell you what happened. We were at Lemuria in Jackson last week, and Tim Ellis was there, the Ole Miss quarterback who beat Notre Dame, and we had Mike Justice, who's a great high school coach and player. We were all signing, and Ricky Black comes up to get his book signed. We just scoot out and say, "Come have a seat."
Yeah,
And
that's
everybody who
cool.
came through
Yeah.
knew him, talked to him,
Yeah.
thanked him for coaching their children. Apparently, made a huge difference in so many people's
Yeah.
lives. And Rick knows him better than I do.
Jack, the best thing I had when Jackie Sherrill got the job at Mississippi State, and I was the sports editor and columnist to Clarion Ledger. My phone rings one day. It's right after he's taken the job, and it's him. And he says, "I'm calling you because I know you know this state
Yeah.
as well as anybody. I want the names of the 3 best high school coaches in the state, and then I'm gonna hire one of them.
Yeah.
I want to have somebody to be that knows all the coaches and everything to help us with recruiting and everything." So I gave him Ricky's name. I guess Ricky was at Tupelo at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. He was.
And Mac Barnes was at Meridian, and Mike Justice was at Madison Central. And those are the 3 names I gave him. And he interviewed all 3 of them and hired Ricky.
Well, for our listeners, we can now know who to blame. Rick Cleveland.
That's
Ricky making the move to state for Jack because, what Rick said. But then he didn't decide to try to move up in the college ranks. He said, "I think I'm happier at the high school level." Anyway, he's still beloved here too, as well as he is obviously in Jackson. All right. Stetson Bennett in Georgia and Joe Horn, 2 local stories here. Yeah, they're under the auspices of the JUCO stories. Talk a little. Joe Horn actually his family still lives in Tupelo. He's here often. He does
Is
some
he?
camps
I didn't know
for
that.
people, and we see him around Tupelo still sometime. That iconic picture of him calling the
cell phone.
goalpost.
That was so far ahead of its day, and now everybody aspires to get to that level again without getting fined.
Yeah. I still the excessive celebration rule. If you talk about a subjective
Yeah.
call,
Yeah.
I don't mean to air my grievances to everybody, but Vanderbilt had beaten Florida in Gainesville when our best receiver caught a touchdown pass at the end of the 4th quarter. He went on to play for the Bears. I mean, he was a great receiver. Jay Cutler was the quarterback. He did something like this. They moved us back 15 yards, and we missed the extra point. Instead of the 2-point conversion, we missed it. We lost Florida by 1 point. And ever since then, I have not been a fan of who decides what an excessive celebration is. Can you define it?
Here's what I think. I think it was a bunch of old white men in the NCAA, some obscure office in Kansas where they were operating back then, that got tired of watching young black men be happy
Scoring touchdown.
celebrating touchdowns. And I
Just a
think
cultural-
I think that's what happened.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, it would be a big coincidence otherwise, wouldn't it? Because all of a sudden, I don't like taunting, but I think taunting is probably I think we pretty much people agree what taunting is.
Yeah.
But celebrating that, I mean, that's anyway. I
And
appreciate
what
your time.
DK Metcalf did and Elijah Moore did in state probably merits
That
a flag.
merits a flag.
That merits a flag. It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Deuce McAllister diving into the end zone after a 100-yard kickoff return against Alabama does not merit
No.
a 15-yard penalty.
No way.
Let the young man be happy. I mean, he just
Absolutely.
did something really neat.
Absolutely.
You
No,
know,
I
I
agree.
disagree with it, totally.
Stetson Bennett, just because that's more recent for our younger fans here, maybe that are watching this and aren't of our vintage and love the memories. What a story talking about guys that keep getting underrated and
Unbelievable.
keep coming back. Persistent. Neil, talk a little bit about him.
Well, here's what I think is so great about the Mississippi JUCO system, and that is that it gives young men who either failed out or had some problems that second or sometimes third chance that they need, and that's just a perfect example of it. And he actually didn't have that great a career in terms of statistics in JUCO, but then went to Georgia, won 2 back-to-back, was beating out 5-star recruits to be the starting quarterback, and now he's a backup in a pro team, and I wouldn't count him out.
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
He's really talented.
yeah. One of the things that this NIL a name, image, and likeness, and then the portal and all of this stuff. But I mean, almost why would you not want the best 20-year-old instead of the best 18-year-old?
Absolutely.
I mean, I just think the community college, it just gets even more and more important and an opportunity for young guys who mature a little bit more, either get a little bigger, a little faster, or not. I mean, we know from some of the great, Jerry Rice, Walter Payton, Brett Favre, Ole Miss and State, they weren't geniuses on the recruiting.
None of them recruited any of those.
No, and I just think the community college, JUCO, and the whole system.
Well, Jack Walter Payton wasn't recruited out of Columbia because he celebrated touchdowns.
Yeah, hey, tell that story. I love that story. It's what a joyous person, and how stupid these scouts were back then.
Yeah,
or how
his last
prejudiced they were.
His last game at Columbia High, he scored 6 touchdowns, and on the last one, he turned around and ran the last 30 yards backwards.
Yeah.
And when certain college coaches found out about that, they said, "We're not recruiting that."
Hot dog.
Yeah. Well,
so
they
to speak.
used another word.
Right.
And so, it's like Neil and I've talked 100 times. I mean, you can teach a guy to hand the ball to the official.
Yeah.
You can't teach him to score 7 touchdowns.
Not real smart. Not real smart.
That wasn't very forward thinking there.
Well, and then and then tell the other story at the combine.
Oh, at Jackson State Senior Day. Tell you how good Jackson State was in 1973. They had 21 NFL prospects that were seniors.
Yeah.
I mean, they were unbelievable. But Walter was obviously the best, and he was the first one to run the 40-yard dash for all the scouts, and he ran it 3 times and timed 4.4, 4.5, 40. And then all the other guys ran it, and Walter came back out. He ran back out to the start line. He had a real high-pitched voice.
Yeah, I remember. I met him once. But
he said, "Hey, y'all, time this." And he proceeded to get in a handstand and handstanded 40 yards.
Yeah, I wish I could see that. I mean, talk about athletic.
Yeah, well, and he didn't have on a shirt on at the time, and the muscles were just rippling everywhere while he did that. And usually when I tell that story, somebody in the audience will say, "Well, what was his time?" And I have no idea what his time was, but I guarantee it was a world record.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, those just boys among men kind of stories are just wonderful. Really, it makes you feel good to be a Homo sapien. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to say that they're people, there are human beings that can do that kind of. So I remember Tupelo played once one of the good basketball teams from Alabama, Bobby Lee Hurt, who was I don't know if y'all remember him or not, but was a super college player and then of course played in the pros. But he came over to Tupelo to play in a tournament, a Christmas tournament, and his team. We went to watch him. Really, I mean, I wanted to support our team too, but I really wanted to see Bobby Lee Hurt because he was heralded, I guess, somebody in sports for read. This guy's coming. He's a great high school player, and he didn't warm up with the team. They all warmed up, and he wasn't. Oh man, I hope he's not sick or something like that. but then he comes out to start the game. And it's just like, everybody else is here,
Yeah.
and here he comes just kind of gliding out, and just, I mean, it was just one of those men among boys things. I mean, he was just obvious. I'm sure Walter Payton was kind of the same way.
He was
super talented.
Unbelievable. Yeah, he had muscles places other people don't have. His abs had abs.
Yeah. Well, if y'all don't mind staying a little longer, we got some great stuff.
Sure.
I know your Ole Miss pedigree, Charlie Flowers.
Oh, just the most amazing guy. Everybody's All-American in all sorts of ways.
Tell just a little bit of the stories. I know Robert Cayati talked about him and others, but I know as a boy, Charlie Flowers was one of my heroes.
Charlie Flowers was an amazing person. He was not only an All-American and an All-American. He was the highest ranked academic All-American his year. Probably should have won the Heisman Trophy had it not been for the loss to Billy Cannon in that 59 team. He would have won. He had a higher average than everybody else. My favorite Charlie Flowers story, though, is what happened in 1958 in the Gator Bowl. And y'all heard this story, great story. So Ole Miss goes to play for Florida in the Gator Bowl in 1958. They come back after the game, and everybody's valuables are gone. The wallets are gone. The pocket watches grandfathers gave them are gone. They looked around and said nobody had access to the locker room. There was one person missing, and that was Larry Grantham.
Yeah.
So he disappears. The first day of practice, August of 1959, Coach Vaught comes into the locker room and says, "Boys, there's somebody here who wants to talk to you." So Larry Grantham and his father come in, and his father says, Larry apologizes. He's given his life back to Christ. Hope you'll let him back on the team. Larry won't make eye contact. He hems and haws, apologizes, and Vaught says, "I'm going to leave it up to you guys to what you do." And they left. Charlie Flowers is the captain of the team. He stands up and says, "Boys, Larry Grantham is a lying, cheating, stealing son of a bitch. But he's the best end we have. Put him back on the team. They got a lock for your locker." And that's quintessential Charlie Flowers.
Yeah.
Quintessential.
That's a great story.
Flowers told me one time, I asked Charlie, he was a great fullback on offense. I said, "What'd you play on defense?" Charlie said, "I played linebacker." And I said, "Golly, you must have made 1,000,000 tackles." And he said, "No, I played behind Larry Grantham. They never got to me."
We'll talk about great players and kind of perhaps ne'er-do-wells, but there's a great story in there about Possum.
Oh, yeah, Possum Price.
Again, on what do you do with a great player who tell that?
Well, Rick, you tell the smoking story. You heard it firsthand. I've heard it second.
Yeah, Possum. First of all, what very few people know is that he didn't sign with Ole Miss out of high school. He signed with Texas.
Yeah.
And he goes out and spends the summer working in Austin. But he gets homesick, and he comes back to Vicksburg. And Vaught caught word of it. He sent Bruiser Kennard down to recruit him to Ole Miss. And Bruiser was down there for 2 days and couldn't find him. And he was walking down the street, and he saw a guy that he thought would be Possum's age. And he said, "Do you know where I can find Possum Price?" And the guy said, "Have you checked that bar down on the corner?" And he said, "No, but I will."
It's
he
like an
goes
18-year-old. So.
Yeah, he goes in there, and there's Possum sitting at the bar smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer, and it's like noon. And Possum told the story better than anybody. And I said, "Well, what did he say, Possum?" He said, "Boy, we're going to your house and getting your stuff, and you're coming to Oxford."
Yeah.
And I said, "What'd you say?" And I said, "Yes, sir." That was Bruce Kennard.
Yeah. All right. Well, tell one more, but again, tell the story about when Coach Vaught said no.
Oh,
the smoking. Yeah.
This is when Wobble Davidson, who ran the dorm there, the athletic dorm, and he saw smoke coming out from underneath Possum's dorm room door.
And Wobble gave no one a break.
Yeah.
No one was special.
You know how much you have to be smoking for the smoke to be coming out under the door. And he said, "Coach, I got bad." He goes to Vaught and said, "I got bad news for you. Possum's smoking. He's really smoking a lot." And what are we gonna do, Coach? Vaught said, "Don't catch him. Just don't walk by his room anymore." And then he sent Bruiser.
Right, yeah, that's the TS.
He sent Bruiser over to have a talk with Possum, and Bruiser went and said, "Possum, are you still smoking?" And he said, "Coach, I've been smoking since I was 7 years old. I just can't quit." And Bruiser said, "Well, could you at least cut back?"
You know, that sounds like Coach Vaught said if he had had the opportunity, he would have rethought the not married.
And to lose Lance Allworth, and that 59-60 team, we've won the national championships for sure. Yeah.
No doubt. And also one of the greatest players, if not the greatest in Mississippi State history, was Jackie Parker, who Vaught wouldn't even recruit because he was married.
Yeah, those were. Anyway,
so was the senior Mangum. I mean, he was married.
Oh, John
Mangum. He went to Alabama.
No, we're talking about the one that went to Southern. The one at Alabama's
father.
Oh, okay.
He's a great player. Played for the Patriots in the NFL, and he wanted to get married as a freshman, and Vaught wasn't going to let him stay on the team, so he just transferred to Southern. He was a 3-year starter on some of the best defenses they've ever had.
Yeah.
In fact, they played that team that he was a senior on. There were 4 guys on their defense that played in the NFL, and at one point during that season, they played 3 straight 3-0 games. They beat Auburn 3-0. They beat Richmond 3-0, and they lost to VMI 3-0.
That sounds like the basketball when everybody started going to the 4 corners. And those games were like 6-4.
Yeah.
Those are terrible games.
For the shot clock.
Well,
do you know why Vaught had that rule of the marriage rule? So he was head coach in 47. He was assistant coach in 46. So when he took over in 47, he had a ton of veterans, Charlie Connerly and a bunch of others. Charlie was not married, but most of the players, Buddy Bowen, those guys were all married, and Vaught would have them out at practice. A lot of them were 25, 26, 27. Their wives and kids were waiting over there for practice to end, and they were waiting for it. And then when they would finish practice, they would ask him for money for milk for the kids. He said, "I am tired of dealing with my players' wives. We're not doing this anymore."
Really, I never knew that. Yeah. That was because it was after the war. Yeah. Well, a couple more people I know our listeners in Tupelo would be amiss if we didn't mention, because not everybody in here is an athlete. Jack Crystal, of course, the hometown hero.
He's the only announcer in that book, and if there's going to be one, it had to be Jack.
Absolutely. And I love the Archie Band, the quote you attribute.
I called Archie when Jack retired, and I was doing a piece for the Clarion Ledger about it, and I just asked Archie. I was looking for an interesting angle to the story.
Yeah, which was?
I asked Archie, do you know Jack Crystal very well? And he said, "I grew up sitting at my kitchen table with my daddy listening to Jack Crystal tell the stories of the game." He said, "To me, Jack Crystal's college football."
Yeah.
That's Archie Manning.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I saw. That was a lovely touch on that, because you think it would obviously be some Mississippi State alum. Well, we were lucky enough to have Jack Crystal here for most of his career. So he did Tupelo High School football.
I did not know that.
He also, Rick, you may not know this. Oh, I may have told you. He also did the live Tupelo High School pep rally.
Really?
They would come, the WLO would come to Tupelo High School, and they would have the 2 captains come out. They would do the cheerleaders. They have the spirit stick. Was it going to be the sophomores, juniors, seniors who yelled the loudest, or sang the whatever. And then he would interview the captains about the next night's game. And I was a senior. I was lucky enough to be one of the captains. So I remember that was just so cool to go out to the center of the gym floor and have Jack Crystal
interview you. Wow.
Unfortunately, I was not that lucky a captain for us. We got beat by Russellville, Alabama, the next night by about 3 touchdowns. But anyway, I mean, he was that much of a hometown person to those of us in Tupelo, and then he did the high school games as well. But what a like I said, just his voice was unmistakable. John Grisham one of his books was about football, and if you get the audio of that book, he had Jack Crystal read the sports announcer part of it.
The Playing for Pizza book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack. So if you ever want the audio of that, if you just want to hear Jack Crystal's voice.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
Well, it sounds like you guys may have been overstayed my welcome here. Oh, with Elvis, yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's a picture in the book, Jack, of Jack Crystal interviewing Elvis Presley.
Yeah,
And it was here. I think it was
Yeah.
out at the National Guard Armory or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, at the
at the fairgrounds.
Lee County Fair.
Yeah, right. A
Yeah.
block from here. Yeah.
And so somebody sent me the picture, and I interviewed Jack about it. And, you know, Jack did not bullshit.
No.
You got whatever was on his mind is what you got.
His Navy. I won't say profanity. His Navy lexicon stayed with him.
Yeah, and he said, I said, well, how'd the interview go? And he said, worst interview I ever did. I said, what do you mean the worst interview? He said, he obviously didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to be there either.
That's great.
Well, that was interesting that he said, and y'all said it in the book, he said when he was 6 years old, there's just the image of somebody in some stadium far away getting to tell people about the game. And
He said he knew right then that's what he
that's what
wanted
he
to
would
do.
do the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And, you know, those of us who love sports, and I presume the people that are watching this are among that category, men and women, there really is so much of life in sports without being too profound about it. I mean, it is the ups and the downs. It's the agony of defeat and the thrill of victory, and then the sad times and the happy times. But there are a lot more happy times, I think, than sad times. And just being there, just being with your team, just being on a team is a wonderful part of growing up. You know, I mean, it can be, and that team can be the band. I mean, it can be the chess team, but if it's a sport, that's another example of it.
Technology.
Anything? I don't know what. If the people can hear the horn honking, I don't know what it is.
Oh, they hear it all.
Alarm going off. It looks like.
But anyway, closing out anything. I'll just say again to those that are watching, we've got signed copies of this book for gifts or for yourself. Really, for anybody that cares anything about Mississippi football, this is the new Bible of it. And I really appreciate Neil and Rick taking the time to research it and then to making him by the horn sounding going off now. Maybe that's just an acclamation or an accent on this. But any final thoughts y'all would like to say? Neil, you go first.
Well, I'll say this. It is a football book, but Rick wrote so much of the narrative that he eyewitnessed over reporting for 57 years. Started when he was 2, right? So
Yeah,
two.
right.
This is about football, but it's really human interest stories, and it's really behind the scenes. And so this book, I think my daughter helped proofread it, and she could not care less about football. And she left saying, I can't decide whether Reggie Collier or Ray Guy's my new favorite football player, because the stories about everybody in this book, it's what they did, but it's what they did before they got on the field or after, or the historical implications of a particular time and place and series of events. So it's a great gift for football fans, but it's a great read.
Yeah, I read it I read it the whole thing in one sitting. I just kept flipping, kept going. Rick, any final comments or thoughts?
You know, Jack, there's Ole Miss football books, there's state football books, there's Southern football books. There ought to be a lot of books about Jackson State, but they're not right now. But this is the only book I know of that includes them all, and high school, junior college, and the NFL. And you know, part of what really, in my mind, makes it special is that this is something we do better
Absolutely.
than anybody.
We can unabashedly be proud of our Mississippi football heritage.
We do it. We have more Pro Football Hall of Famers per capita, more Pro Football players per capita in the history of the NFL.
Yeah. And then Jerry Rice, Walter Payton, Brett Favre.
That's right.
Bang, bang, bang.
That's right. And if you throw Steve McNair and Willie Totten in there,
Yeah.
they're more in. Each section has its own national and annual leader record section,
Yeah.
and those three, Willie Totten and Steve McNair and Jerry Rice. Usually, we have rushing. They have their own sections of records.
Yeah,
because
I've
there's so
read
many
those.
that they're still standing.
Yeah, and on defense, I mean, who would not want Dede Lewis or Patrick Willis
That's right.
to be a linebacker?
And Rod Davis from Southern still holds the most individual tackles in an NCAA career record.
Yeah, and see, I enjoyed reading the Southern folks because
Yeah.
you know, growing up at Tupelo, I just didn't see many of the Southern guys. I do remember as a boy seeing Dede Lewis play in person, and I don't remember who they were playing, but all I remember was he'd move to his left and he'd make the tackle. They come up the middle, he'd make the tackle. He'd chase somebody down on the right side. I mean, he was sideline to sideline. I know he made at least half the tackles that day, or was in on the other three. And then Patrick Willis, I got to see too at Ole Miss, and I mean, those defensive guys, they don't get all the glory that the offensive skill set players do necessarily. But what it is nice to be first. Let's see, first about something that's good that we can be proud that we earned. That we don't have to. This tells the statistics don't lie as far as that goes, and we don't have to make up these outstanding.
No, it's all there.
And we didn't even get to Marcus Dupree
That's right.
and some of the potential folks like that. Well, thank you all so much. Anything else, Rick?
No, I just I appreciate what y'all do here in Tupelo, and I appreciate this store. And I remember coming here, my very first book, a long time ago. I was sitting here, and your dad sitting right there, and talking to him. And this place is a treasure.
It sure
Well,
is.
we
It
still
sure is.
need and I appreciate it, Neil. Of course, you've got a wide variety of both publishing and writing away from sports too that we've gotten to know you with. But no, we feel like this is a service to the citizens of Tupelo and our community. I mean, it's a town without a good bookstore. I think is not as good as the town can be. So we're proud of providing this to our.
Too many
should be.
Too
Should
many
be.
too many towns don't have one now.
That's right.
And I just love the fact that you do.
Yeah, well, well with people like y'all coming, we need our authors to come visit us and let us be proud of y'all being here. And thank you for signing these. And as I said, people can call us or go online and purchase these, and we will. Hopefully, we'll have plenty of them all the way through Christmas Eve. So, Rick, thank you. Neil, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time down at the Gumtree Bookstore.